Okay, wonderful. So, Arthur, thank you very much for joining us today. We're joined by Arthur Diles. He's a former Western Sydney Wanderers youth head coach, as well as the current assistant coach at XANTHI FC in Greece. So, Arthur, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me on board.
Arthur, so for those who might not be familiar with yourself, could you give us a little bit of a background regarding your history in football?
History in terms of football. I grew up in a football family, so I started from a very, very young age. Probably 3 years old. I remember started playing at 3 under sixes locally with my older brother. So my passion started very young, and then I kicked on and played youth league and national youth league, and had a couple ventures overseas which weren't as fruitful as I would have liked. But that's many of us that have done that, I suppose. And then I got into coaching at quite a young age. I saw my pathway as a player wasn't going to where I'd hoped it would, and then I thought I'd start coaching early, and so far I've enjoyed that chapter.
Beautiful. So you worked with Western Sydney Wanderers for several years, particularly with their youth players, and you've had great success on that part. In terms of youth players under your tutelage who've gone on to professional contracts, have there been many that have gone on to feature professionally?
Yeah, look, there's been quite a number actually. So in the 5 years that I was there at the Wanderers, many players have been able to go on. I mean, not just players that I've coached. There's been many players that have gone through the club and kicked on. Many have gone on to the first team at Wanderers.
Yep.
But many have also gone on to other clubs in the A-League and obviously overseas. And so I think in terms of being a successful club, the Wanderers in terms of youth development, I think we have been the market leader for a very long time. And I think they've the job and the work that everyone at the Wanderers has done over the years made the other clubs become better and probably follow suit in the way they've worked.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, as a Wanderers fan myself, I was, cheering throughout the stands, particularly with the Asian Cup campaign. Was there for the first leg. Couldn't join them, obviously, in Saudi Arabia for the final. But to see that sort of investment then come over to the facilities that they have out of Blacktown. So I currently coach in the NPL, and we played the Wanderers 2 weeks ago, and the facilities were absolutely top notch.
Yeah, you would have got to see the facilities from close up.
Absolutely. Which kind of brings me to the next question I had in terms of facilities. As a coach, do you find that makes your job easier? Like, how important is that in terms of influencing player development?
Look, firstly, I think your facilities don't guarantee you anything. So if people think that now Wanderers have amazing facilities, and for me it's amazing, not in Australia, it's amazing worldwide. It doesn't mean that you stop working and doing what you did. It just gives you a better platform to keep working better, but it doesn't guarantee anything. It definitely improves the motivation of the players, but it also improves the motivation of the coaches. I remember in my final year there, when the academy opened those facilities, it was a privilege to coach at the club anyway. But then when you had that, turn up to work every day and you have that there, you as a coach are motivated, are privileged, and you want to work harder. And, I think all the current coaches that are there should not take anything for granted there, and they should feel every day a privilege that they work at that club with those facilities, because for me, they're the envy of every other club in the A-League in terms of facilities that they have. So it's something that, it's incredible for players and staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that as well. I mean, just the idea of teams going to play at those facilities, they always seem to have this kind of like a feeling of euphoria that they're being part of something else, something that they're not used to in their normal training sessions on their weekend games. So it is very special, as you said. Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm just agreeing with you, and it's good now that other clubs and players get to witness and experience that as well, because obviously that you get to see what professional football should look like.
Yep.
And it's great that players currently in Australia get to witness and experience this, because this is This is what makes professional football different and special.
Absolutely. So speaking European football, so you joined XANTHI FC in 2020. Is this your first time coaching abroad?
Yes, yeah, first time abroad as a coach. No different to a player. You're faced with many obstacles on and off the field, and fortunately for me that I have a Greek background, so culturally it was a lot easier for me to adapt and fit in.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's all smooth sailing either. But because it's another world here.
Absolutely. Did you find it difficult getting used to the new team? And in terms of the team, how are things coming along?
Look, like any team in football, when you're in a new club and you have new players, whether that's at home or abroad, everything is new. And at the beginning, you got to get familiar with your surroundings and with your players. But the way you are as a coach and the people that you work with make that easier for you or better for you. And it's obviously an experience that's different to back home.
Yeah.
The moment you go to Europe, or not even Europe, the moment you leave Australia and you go into any continent or country where there's promotion and relegation, it's very different. And it's something that I witnessed in the very first friendly game that the club had at the time, and you knew the pressure was on from that first moment. And it's something that's pretty difficult to explain. You have to actually experience it, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy, and but that's world football.
Absolutely. So XANTHI's had a few rough years, which led to their relegation to the Greek second division. In the topic of Greek second division, what kind of competition is it like in terms of difficulty and also the kind of approach that players take to games? Is it a more technical and tactical based game, or is it more of a physical sort of play?
It's not. I wouldn't say it's overly physical. Technical, it could be if other coaches allowed it to be, but it's a very difficult league tactically. It's imagine if you're a team that has no chance of getting promoted, your only objective is to not get relegated. Therefore, when you go into a game, you're defending with 10, and you've got 10 players outside your box, and it's very difficult to break down. And it's a league where there's no blowout scores. It's very close. It's one goal in it, and it doesn't matter if it's the team coming first against the team coming last. If you're winning by more than one goal, it's quite rare.
Sure.
So tactically, it's very difficult. And then along with the tactics, they've got their street smarts about them. They'll kill the game. They'll slow the game down. They'll milk fouls. They'll, as Aussies would probably look at that and say they're cheating, but that's football, really. That's
exactly
something that you got to deal with and you've got to face. And at the beginning, it was rather frustrating, but you have to get acclimatized to it and work out how you got to overcome that.
Sure. So you've gone to XANTHI from a club that heavily relied on youth development and youth promotion in the Wanderers. Do you find that it's the same approach as XANTHI, or does the club rely largely on experienced players?
Look, I don't know. I can't speak too much about the club in the past, but this year the club obviously is trying to get promoted. So in terms of blooding youth, it's not that easy to do. Although there has been a couple of younger players that had opportunities to play, but generally it's I think this is where Australia is in a privileged position to be able to produce players and sell players, because when you don't have that pressure of relegation or promotion for that matter, it should allow you to be a lot more comfortable and brave enough to play young players and give them opportunity. And I mean, I've been keeping close tabs on the A-League this year, and there's a lot of young players getting opportunities to play, which has been really nice to see. And they've held their own. Many have probably exceeded expectations of others, but I'm not surprised at all when I see these players doing well, and not just at the Wanderers, but throughout the whole league. And it goes to show you that given the opportunity, then these players have the chance to show that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. So many kids in Australia, as I'm sure you're already familiar, obviously dream of one day playing in Europe. When do you suggest the kids go overseas to Europe to pursue a career? Do you think that they should pursue that early on in the hopes of their development continuing in Europe, or should they wait once they're able to sign their first contract here?
This is a difficult question because it's not the one size fits all. This,
Sure.
you know, I'm a huge believer that any kid that's doing well in Australia should have his eyes and brain set on playing A-League. You know, if they're in an A-League environment, their objective and their goal should be to play A-League and play professionally within Australia first. But unfortunately, as we've seen for many years, that opportunity is very difficult to come across, and players are forced to leave who might not be in A-League environments, and people might think these kids are mad because you can't play in the A-League, how are you going to make it overseas? But that's not the case at all. It's a lot of kids in Australia don't play in the A-League because they were never given an opportunity to play in the A-League. Yeah. And it's not because they're not good enough, it's because there's no opportunities there. So I don't blame a kid for saying, oh, I'm going to go try overseas. But I strongly recommend that if someone's knocking on the door of an A-League club's first team and has an opportunity to play first team, I like that pathway. I like to think if a player can play 50 games, 100 games in the A-League and then move on, I think that sets them up better for having longevity in their next move. You know, some people go overseas early at 15, at 14, at 16, and they might sign with a Premier League club in England. But by the time that they're 20, they're back in Australia, struggling to get an A-League club and could be an NPL. So it doesn't, there's no pathway that's proven to be success. It's on each individual. And, you know, I wish we had the recipe that said, if you did this, that you would make it, but that's not the case.
Unfortunately not. It would make coaching a lot easier then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. It would make it a lot better for the players, that's for sure, because, Absolutely. You know, it's not like a maths equation where, you know, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah. You know, you can train all you like, you can do extra training all you like, you can look after yourself physically, mentally, you can have, you know, all the help in the world and still not make it, not even get an opportunity to make it. Yeah. So that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, there is something to say for the luck factor as well. Like, you can be in the absolute best place at the wrong possible time and still, as you said, not get a chance. And then you get players that just seem to have everything lay their way and they get a chance early on and they take it with both hands. So it is very difficult. But yeah, it's unfortunately the path that most players have to tread at this point in time. In terms of youth players in Greece, have you found a difference between Aussie players and Greek players in terms of their attitude towards the game and approach to training?
Look, there's the biggest difference that I've seen. There's not a difference for me in ability. I think Australian kids are very talented. Unfortunately, we're painted with the wrong brush outside of Australia. Australia is seen as like a third world country in football, whether you're a player or a coach or an administrator. Unfortunately, that's how we're perceived once we leave our country. But I think Australian players are just as good as any players in their own age around the world. The one difference, though, in terms of culture of a footballer, I will admit that in Europe, and especially what I've seen in my time here, the culture here is different. The passion of the kids is a lot different. Here they live and breathe football. I mean, at the beginning, I went to see a friendly game between the under-17s here and the under-19s, and you're talking about team huddles. You're talking about both teams wanting to kill each other to win. It's just incredibly passionate, and the culture that football has here brings that out in the players. You know, but then you've got other things where, you know, you look at the youth here, and unfortunately, from what I've seen so far, that's generally across Greece, not just here at XANTHI, that a lot of people aren't developing players as such. They're all just playing to win at all costs. So I think you've got to find the middle ground there. I think no kid should ever walk onto the pitch without wanting to win. That's for sure. But I think no coach should sacrifice a kid's development just for a result either. I think the successful coaches can do both. They can develop the kid and make sure that he has a strong winning mentality as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I mean, going on the points that you were just making there, in terms of mental and cultural differences between European football and Australian football, is it just coming down to a matter of the passion for the game, or is it factoring other things as well?
Field for an Australian kid to go, of course, that we call Australia, and in many ways, the standard of living and things that go with when you come, make it because they can't cope mentally and culturally. And obviously back home, I think it's your parents sacrifice so much for you, and they'll move heaven and earth. They'll leave their work early. They'll sacrifice so many things just to make sure that they can take their kids to training. Whereas here, the kid will know, okay, I've got to catch 2 buses, 3 trains, and walk 2 kilometers. And I think all that prepares a player here in Europe a lot better than the Aussie kid, because the Aussie kid that has to do that will think, oh no, this is too hard, or it's. So I think very few can overcome that obstacle.
Yeah. That's we've had discussions with other coaches, particularly Paul Tate out of Everton. He's the under-18s coach there, and one of the things that he mentioned to us as well was the kids overcoming certain adversities to get to football, because some will see it as somewhat of a privilege. They're entitled to be playing football just because they're registered, and other kids, they see it as an opportunity for something bigger and better for themselves. So they will sacrifice almost everything to be able to get there. And that kind of goes on exactly what you're saying. And my background in football, I mean, I'm Bosnian, so a lot of Bosnian kids overseas compared to some of the Bosnian kids I knew grew up were like chalk and cheese. They were incredibly different in terms of their attitude, and it shows in their overall development as well over time.
Yeah, of course, and that's, I think, makes somebody mentally strong is the things that they can not just deal with, but obviously deal with many things. Not everybody gets to overcome those.
Yeah.
The ones that do are normally mentally stronger, and without that, your ability will only take you so far, and you'll probably crack if you don't have that mental toughness. And I think that's something that maybe we lack a little bit in Australia, and that's probably a fault of many things. But I think it's good to have. It's just something that people have to be aware of, and we can't sugarcoat things, or we can't cotton wool our kids, and we've got to make sure that they're resilient. Sure. Because without that, then they're facing a losing battle.
Going on the topic of NPL, with your experience in NPL, do you feel that NPL players that you might have come across, the general quality, do they have the ability to step up to a division like the Greek second division?
Absolutely. First of all, they've got the ability to step up to the A-League, and I think they should be given more opportunities. Second of all, of course, they can go over to Asia or to Europe. I mean, there's a lot of good footballers in the NPL. There's even a lot of good footballers in NPL 2, for example, because I got to see a lot of NPL 2 when through the Wanderers were playing in that league in the winter season. So you got to see a lot of good footballers there as well. But again, lack of opportunity for these players, and so that's why they are where they are, and they've got part-time jobs or full-time jobs and playing part-time, but they've definitely got ability, and if given a chance, I think they can prove themselves. I mean, there's been players in the A-League that have come from NPL 2. I think Matthew Leckie had come from NPL 2 in Melbourne. He's gone on to play in the Bundesliga. So there's been many cases of them, and I think they just need to be given an opportunity.
Sure. And just going on a personal front, what are your career goals? Do you see yourself basing yourself in Greece for a while, or are the ambitions a little bit bigger? It's always a difficult question to ask.
My ambition is to try and stay in football as long as I can, because I've learned one thing for sure, and that's not to take anything for granted. And at any given moment, whether that's deserved or unfair, football unfortunately has its bad things as well. But I think those that love football accept that, and you take that on board and you run with it. I don't know what the future holds. There's an opportunity in Europe at the moment. I don't know how long I'll be here for. You never know in football. I know that every day I want to improve, get better, and wherever that takes me, whether it's as an assistant coach or whether in the future it's as a head coach, I think I've got a lot of room to keep growing and a lot of room in me to keep improving as a person and as a coach. And I think one day I'd like to be a professional coach, whether that's in Europe or in Asia or in Australia. But in the meantime, I've got to keep working hard and I've got to keep learning and just like a player, get through those downs and try and get, through those obstacles. And if I get out the other end, then I know that I've done a good job. And if I don't, then at least I know that I've given it my best.
Absolutely. With Australian coaches, do you recommend them going overseas for opportunities or perhaps even training?
They've got an opportunity to go overseas and learn. I think that's that's the best thing they could possibly do. I think that's given me an advantage over the years. For the last 15 years, I was traveling to Europe yearly to educate myself for coach education and to learn and to rub shoulders with people that are working in big clubs with big CVs and credibility. So for me, that was the best thing that I did as a coach. And I highly recommend that if anyone has that opportunity to do that, you'd be mad not to. The only difficult thing is it's a costly exercise, but I see that as an investment in yourself. It's just like doing a university degree or go and educate. This is the same thing. It does cost money, unfortunately, and if you don't have that money, it doesn't mean that you can't. There's obviously ways online that you can learn things these days. And I think educating yourself is very, very important.
Absolutely. With going abroad, though, is there anything that you would suggest coaches do before they go over there in terms of networking or perhaps minimum education?
Education, yes. I've been faced with a lot of obstacles since I've been here. I highly recommend people, if they've got opportunities to do UEFA licenses, I'd be doing those. Unfortunately, like I've discovered and many people before me have discovered, having an AFC license in Europe it doesn't really count for much. And it's unfortunate, but it's a problem that we'll all be faced with going in the near to Europe as an Asian or Australian coach. So if you can get UEFA licenses, doesn't mean don't do the license. I'm not saying don't do the licenses in Australia, but if you have an opportunity to have UEFA licenses, it definitely does help. Okay. So I've had to deal with that since I've been here, which hasn't been pleasant. But again, it's another obstacle that you face, and it's these obstacles seem to be coming, from every which way, and you've got to be ready for it, and you can't let it put you down.
Absolutely. Just with the topic of licenses, I've heard many different things. So exactly how does it work? If you have an AFC A license, is there an equivalency to the UEFA license or not really?
No, that's the unfortunate thing. And it's in each country, I suppose, it's different ruling and they see things differently. At the moment, there's no, they don't even, they look at your paperwork and some will tell you can, I'm currently doing my pro license in Australia. Some people here will tell you, well, you got to start from C in Europe. Some tell you start from B in Europe. Yeah, so there's nothing at the moment that can guide you or help you in any way. It's quite frustrating, but I think after dealing with FIFA, AFC, and UEFA during the last 8 months, everyone's trying to work toward a better outcome for the AFC coaches, and hopefully that's sorted in the near future.
Sure. Well, we can only hope. Are you following the A-League this year? And if so, which team do you think has had the most success in terms of their approach towards games? So not necessarily their results on the field, but rather how they approach overall development and overall cohesion and I guess building towards something.
I've really liked watching Melbourne City this year. I think they play some really good football. I think Paddy Kisnorbo there is obviously doing a great job in his first year as a head coach there. So I'm not doing well on the ladder as well, but in terms of the style of football, I've really enjoyed seeing them play. I think the other teams for me, it's there hasn't really been a standout other than them for me, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, other teams are still doing well this year. There's, you've seen clubs. I think this year the competition is much closer than it's probably ever been, which has been great.
Yeah.
But I think generally, just seeing the young players get opportunities to play has been really pleasant, and seeing a lot of boys that I'd coached at the Wanderers playing this year at the Wanderers and other clubs.
Yeah.
It's been really good to see, and I'm really happy for them. And even at other clubs, seeing many youngsters at other clubs. Every club at the moment's playing young players, so
Yeah.
I think that's been the standout for me this year, more so than a team doing really well or not doing really well. It's been quite open, so it's actually pleasant to see the A League this year from afar, because the games I'm watching here for 4 days, 1-0 and 2-1, just and nil, and it hasn't been great on the eye at times, let me tell you. So watching the A League, seeing a bit free flowing and attacking, it's been quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the results recently was a 7-0 win for Melbourne City over Melbourne Victory. That's for Melbourne Victory fans, it wouldn't be very good to see, but it is a testament to how the guys down at Melbourne City have got them set up. And then, as you mentioned, they're playing extremely free-flowing football.
Yeah, good stuff, really good stuff. And it's good to see that it's been a coach now that's been given an opportunity, who's relatively young and come through the club there. Obviously, learn off a lot of head coaches they would have worked under, and he's proven that he can go in and from his first year not only get results but do it playing a good way of football. So I think there's coaches that have been given opportunities. Again, like the players that need to be given opportunities, coaches need to be given opportunities also. And I think Patrick's shown that this year, that you can, prove your worth.
Absolutely. With regards to the looming or potentially looming Australian second division, what are your thoughts on the prospect of a second division and how this will impact on player development in the country?
I think the whole idea of it looks great, and I don't know how it can work, to be honest with you. I think that's for people, that the money men that can dot their I's and cross their T's. I think it's, in hindsight, it'd be great to have that, but can it work financially? I don't know. If it can, it's great. As long as that competition isn't a competition that it's just clubs bleeding money and not giving youngsters an opportunity to play. I think it'd be great just to see the A League expand to 16 or 18 teams, which automatically will give more coaches and more players a chance to play and an opportunity. And then, NPL space, if it's run correctly, I think can be a great breeding ground for players to be given an opportunity to then go up to that league.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can get a national second division up and running, and it's viable for all the clubs financially, then great. Because then, yes, it will give opportunities. But if it means that clubs are going to be bleeding and within 5 years they're going to be broke, then I think leave the current system. But that's not for me to decide. I'm only all for opportunities for coaches and players, whatever that is, to be able to be professional. If it means national second division, great. If it means in the current structure, not prevailing teams, great. If it means they change the current structure to force people to play more younger players, great.
Perfect. And finally, if you were to give advice to young players who are looking to go over to Europe or actually dream of making a career in football, what would some of that advice be? Another loaded question.
First of all, make sure you're brave. Yeah, look, I think a footballer has to understand, first and foremost, that doesn't matter how much they're willing to work or sacrifice, it doesn't guarantee them anything. So if you can have that in the back of your mind always, and know that every day that you wake up and you work to be the best you can, everything you got, knowing that there's no guarantee, I think that's the first That's the first thing that a player needs to know and have in their head, because once they have that, they'll be willing to overcome whatever it takes. If you don't have that, if you think that if I do this extra training and if I wake up early or I do whatever needs to be done and it guarantees me something, and I didn't make it, then it's not going to happen, because there's a lot more downs than ups in football when you're trying to make it at the end, right? Not at the beginning, there's a lot of ups because you're playing youth football or junior, you're scoring a lot of goals and your team's always winning. And, you know, so you experience a lot of beautiful things when you're young. And the older you get, those beautiful moments, they start to diminish and you're not left with a lot of those. And if you're strong enough to get through that, then you're on the right path. Then you got to make sure that, you know, you're honest with yourself, and it's not always, you know, being surrounded by people that are going to tell you what you want to hear, because unfortunately, as many parents do, they're very biased towards their own kid, and then you got the other parents that completely hammer their own kids, thinking that that's a better way, because I'm his harshest critic, and you know that doesn't work either. I think parents need to be parents and support their kids as human beings, and then let the specialists, in terms of their coaches, try and help them develop and give them the best opportunity to make it. They need to be resilient, they need to be humble, they need to be hardworking, and they got to be willing to sacrifice.
That's wonderful advice, and that's I think spot on. We time and time will see, particularly on the sideline, you know, parents getting involved or getting in the child's ear, and as a coach, it becomes very difficult to continue their development, because you somewhat feel like you've lost the child. Once they go home, they hear something else, and it might bring them down, or you know, inflated senses of ego, which then just breeds arrogance, and that's unfortunately just a downer as well. So being humble, I guess, is incredibly important for players. So that's well said.
Yep, that's what I've seen over the years, and I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of parents ruin their children, which is quite sad. And not only have they ruined them as footballers, they actually ruin the relationship they have with their children as well. So you actually lose out in both ways. So I think it's very difficult for parents to do what they think is the right thing or know as being the right thing. It's difficult. But anyway, I think that's one thing that might upset a few people when they hear that, because those parents probably know it's them. And you know, coaching, unfortunately, you get a lot of parents that dislike you. For every one parent that likes you, there's 5 that don't like you because their kid didn't make your team. So you're the bad guy. So already you're up against it anyway. But that's okay. We don't coach for those reasons. So
that's it. Exactly right. Absolutely.
Not a popularity contest, that's for sure. Coaching.
It never is. It never is. Arthur, thank you very, very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Good luck for the rest of the season, and obviously your ongoing adventure as well, and your ventures in football. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on XANTHI, hoping for that promotion.
Yeah.
And
yes, thanks for touching base and getting me on. And it's always nice to talk to people about football and experiences. Thanks for that, and all the best with your coaching as well in your NPL space.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work, and be in touch soon.
Not a problem. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.